Hello everyone, this is Jared Pixley again, candidate for President 2028, and this week I have something very important to discuss. It is the freedom of speech. Allow me to read to you the First Amendment to the Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the rights of the people peaceably to assemble, or to petition the government for a redress of grievances. I guess a little bit of a history lesson, since based on our test scores, I know a lot of people, don't know the history. So, after the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution, which divided up the powers of government between the three branches, they realized that they had never established any freedoms for the people. There was no protection for civil liberties. So they sat down and fixed that with the Bill of Rights. That's the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. And as we just read, the first one covers the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, and the freedom to assemble, and the freedom to sue the government. The second one is, very famous. That's the right to bear arms and the right to establish a militia. And then there's others, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Feel free to look it up for yourselves. So, why am I talking about the freedom of speech today? Because the current administration is fighting against it. They are trying to abolish the freedom of speech. As Trump has famously said, that since the late night shows are criticizing him and his administration, they should have their licenses pulled. I.e., he's claiming that there should be no right to freedom of speech or freedom of the press, as many of these late night shows are on news channels, ABC, NBC, CBS. He has blocked reporters from interviewing the Pentagon officials. He's banned certain reporters from the White House press pool. He's suing newspapers for reporting on him. So he is attacking the freedom of speech and the freedom of press, but we're going to focus more on the freedom of speech. Last week, the FCC convinced Disney to ban Jimmy Kimmel. Disney has been waiting for the FCC, which is part of the Trump administration. These are Trump's appointees at the head of the FCC. He's been waiting for them to authorize a merger with some local network stations. With some local networks. So as a condition of that, they had Disney ban Jimmy Kimmel. As many lawyers have said online, that if he wanted to sue, it's a slam dunk case against him, against the government. It's a violation of freedom of speech. Now, this didn't come out of nowhere. Actually, a couple months ago, Trump had floated the idea of getting rid of Jimmy Kimmel. He was just looking for an excuse. As I'm going to show you now some of Trump's tweets, where he's bragging about getting Stephen Colbert off the air, talking about Jimmy Kimmel next, then bragging about getting rid of Jimmy Kimmel, and talking about getting Jimmy Fallon and others removed as well. Basically, anyone who speaks against him, he wants gone. Many people have suggested online, as American citizens, we can fight back. Our methods are limited. I can find there's no way to really get the president out of office, in a non-election year. That's up to Congress to impeach him. However, the Republicans will not vote to impeach, or at least most Republicans will not vote to impeach. The Democrats don't have enough votes yet. Hopefully that changes next year and we can get rid of him. And J.D. Vance and RFK Jr. And the list goes on. However, what we can do is express our dissatisfaction to the companies. Many people have canceled their I believe it was NBC accounts. It might be CBS. I'm pretty sure it's NBC. Whoever does Colbert. They've canceled their streaming accounts with them, and the company has announced that their revenue has dropped by millions of dollars. People have started deleting their Disney account. Canceling their Disney accounts. Disney just put out a notice that they're looking at somewhere close to $1 billion in lost revenue after canceling Kimmel. And we can press even harder. I'm sure that not everyone has heard about that. I'm not sure not everyone has thought about that. But boycotting these companies, tells them how we feel about their policies. If they want to cave to a fascist, then we won't give them our money. I personally don't have any streaming accounts except for Netflix, and actually for financial reasons, I just canceled my Netflix account, so I'm not giving anyone my money, period. But if you have a Disney account, considering joining the boycott, we need to fight back, because you cannot satisfy a fascist. You appease him once, he'll come back for more. You give him an inch, he'll take a mile. He will go after Jimmy Fallon, and he will go after, I'm not sure who else is next. There's what's his name on HBO. Last Week Tonight. He's also very critical of Trump. There's The Daily Show on Comedy Central. If we don't stop them now, there will be more cancellations. If we don't stand up for our freedom of speech now, he'll come after other freedoms. He's already attacking voting rights. He has recently ordered all states to give the federal government their voting records. The federal government does not need your voting records. Voting is a power given specifically to the states. He just wants the voting records to find out who's registered as a Democrat so that he can then go after them. If you're a Democrat with a Hispanic last name and he gets your voting records, you can expect ICE to visit your home in the near future. I just cannot express how important of a situation this is. Once he takes away one right, he will go after another. So we need to make a stand. We need to peacefully resist. Vote with your vote with your checkbook, or your debit card or credit card or whatever. Vote with your money. Do not support businesses that cave to him. It will convince other businesses to stand up. Because if they know, Disney caved and they lost over $1 billion, can we really afford to cave? These companies can take this to court. FTC is denying them a license for not firing a host. Take him to court, freedom of speech. The current Supreme Court actually made a ruling on us last year, which declared that the government cannot take away your freedom of speech. It was a 9-0 vote. All 9 justices that are currently serving wrote a ruling protecting your freedom of speech. Any business can cite that ruling, cite these current justices as precedent, to defend their people's freedom of speech. And it's not just the businesses they're going after. There's been lots of stuff online that MAGA is trying to get information on anyone who speaks out about Charlie Kirk. and that they will flood the people's employers with complaints in order to get them fired, as a way to silence people for saying what Charlie Kirk had said. Now, I don't have an employer, so guess what? I can safely, without fear, speak out against it. I disagree with everything Charlie Kirk said. I disagree with his belief that we should stone the homeless. I disagree with his belief that children should sacrifice themselves to protect our Second Amendment. Yeah. I disagree with his belief that homosexuals are no better than animals. Yeah. However, I also disagree with political violence. Charlie Kirk had the freedom to say all that hate speech. I disagree with what he said, but I will fight to the death for his right to say it. But that did not warrant violence. That did not warrant an attack against him. That did not warrant his death. Hate just breeds more hate. I disagree with hate speech, but people do have a right to speak. And I say we should fight that hate speech with love speech. We should be Christians. We should follow Christ's example. Love your neighbor. Yeah. How can they fight against love? Stand up for your right to vote. Resist the tyranny that we are starting to see in our daily lives. Resist the hate. Fight back without violence. Resist with your wallet. All these companies want is more money. If we deny them that, then they'll have to cave to our desires. And remember on election day, who voted for what? Did your representatives represent you, or did they advocate for tyranny? And then fight with your vote. Vote in the people that will protect you. Vote out the ones that caved, to a fascist government. Yeah. So that is all I have for you this week. So feel free to like, subscribe, buy my book, Pixley for President 2028. And sign up for any of my social medias. You'll find them in the channel description. Have a good day, and continue to love one another.